is Facebook delaying here? Come on, Facebook. You can do it. Huh. All right, Facebook is being finicky. Not the first time. All right, I'm gonna stop. Aha, now it's gonna go. Thank you, Facebook. All right. Hi, everyone. We are here tonight with Seth Hall, running in Kentucky's 4th Congressional District. And Seth has signed candidates with a contract, an anti-corruption contract. So I'll just let you go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit, just basics, and why you signed the contract.
Yes, my name's Seth Hall, and I won the Democratic nominee for the 4th Congressional District in the state of Kentucky. We have about 20 counties that I cover, from Jefferson County all the way over to Ashland, Kentucky. It's about a 3-hour drive, 3.5-hour drive across the entire district. We've got about 582,000 constituents in the district. Our big issues are infrastructure. We've got a bridge that goes across over to Cincinnati that is practically about to fall down. Pieces of concrete are falling off of it, and we'd like to get that replaced, the Brent Spence Bridge. We'd like to expand 71 to 3 lanes all the way from Louisville to Cincinnati. And we've got to get better water infrastructure as well as broadband throughout the entire district. And we see that as just an economic engine to help keep our students here with jobs now that you can work from home, just like we're doing things from home right now. More and more of our kids could stay at home in our local communities if we had that broadband ability out in the 4th district. The healthcare is the second biggest issue that we're covering. Healthcare is just important. We want to prop up and fix the account of the Affordable Care Act. It's important that we take that and put the risk corridor back in that was stripped out by the Republicans. That's what's caused the greatest increase in our premiums. And it's just been attacked by 1,000 cuts since it was implemented. And we need to really restore the Affordable Care Act. And then the third thing, and especially big here in Kentucky, is our teachers. I want to protect our teachers and our children's education, public school education. And we want to put teachers back into Social Security and give them their survivor benefits. Today, the teachers in Kentucky are excluded. Even if they have another job and they pay into Social Security, they don't get it. It's restricted. They only get their teacher retirement plan, which has come under attack, and they don't even get their survivor benefits. So we want to include at Washington to get the teachers back included in those benefits. And of course, our school children, we want to protect public education. We've been under attack by the Republicans in the state to strip away public education and insert charter schools, which are just bad for the communities, the local communities. They don't have sports. They don't have sports teams. They don't have things that help bring the community together on the weekends or any other event to help hold communities together. And as we saw in Michigan, it just falls apart. Your local communities fall apart. So those are the things that are important to us in this campaign.
It's very interesting and sad to hear, but we hear the same things all across the country about when we talk to candidates. Most recently, Louisiana, about the infrastructure is just crumbling. And then there's so much pollution, and the water isn't clean. It's everywhere, and you just think, how can this be in this country that we're at this state now? And it's just, I hope with
there's a handful of people that have gotten so greedy in these campaigns. I mean, we talk about signing this contract. These campaigns are just nothing about being a money generator.
Right.
For lots of people make money off these campaigns. and they see the bigger the campaign, the more money, the more people can make money. And
Absolutely.
it needs to be controlled, and that's one reason why I signed that contract with for America. Uh,
I'm very glad you did, and that's part of why we do what we're doing here. It's very inexpensive. We pay for a Zoom account, and we just stream to Facebook as long as they'll allow it, and
right.
everywhere else we can. But it is really sickening when you hear these obscene amounts of money that are spent on political campaigns and just the whole in the cycle. And now there's no real break even in between. I mean, on the one hand, I think it's great that more people are paying attention to the midterms than before. The media is giving it more attention. But that's just this endless cycle of money, and that's the advertisers. And I think when regular people hear these amounts, it's just crazy. We could be fixing that bridge, or cleaning up the water, any number of things. So that's what we try to do here. Is we hope to get more people hearing candidates like yourself directly and how they might represent them, because for the most part, the smaller candidates aren't getting the media coverage. Have you been able to get any media, like national, and what's the situation local?
We've gotten local media coverage. We haven't gotten any national coverage. And to tell you the truth, I don't know whether I want to get national coverage. It, it,
Okay.
it really escalates the war game of money.
Mm.
Uh, so you go national, you get money, then the other side gets money, and it just starts the escalation of the money. And it's happened here in Kentucky in one of our districts, and basically, that district is taking all the money from hundreds of candidates just for one position.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good point. Usually, what we've seen is the candidates, I'm saying the smaller candidates, but the grassroots candidates, what happens is they're ignored unless they become a real threat, then the media will smear them. But that's an excellent point, though. I guess if you just stayed under the radar, you could reach the people in your community directly. I mean, that's all it takes is getting people to the
That's what
polls.
we're doing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just showing up everywhere. My
Mm-hmm.
opponent, the Republican incumbent, he's a self-proclaimed one of the craziest congressmen in Congress.
Thomas
He,
Massey.
vo- he votes no on every bill that comes up. He voted no for aid to Puerto Rico. The only thing he voted yes on, he's a self-proclaimed libertarian. He voted yes on the tax decrease or tax cuts for the rich.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as a libertarian, if that was one thing he stood for, he should have voted no on that bill.
Right.
But he didn't even hold true to it, because that's just not his values. His values is greed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
just following along in the trail of so many others, and some of them Democrat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just greed. It's about making money.
Right. It's definitely both sides of the aisle. I mean, we have had more Democrats than other candidates sign, but we're seeing an increase in independents and Greens, and we've had some Democrats decide to run as independents. So that's happened too. So what is your experience then? Do you think it's because, I mean, it must be largely because the moneyed person you're up against is a Republican. If you had another Democrat that was a corporate established Democrat, it would probably be a similar, that you were up against, probably a similar.
We had that in the primary. We had someone that was heading down that road of taking corporate PAC money,
Mm-hmm.
and we defeated her just by showing up, being at local events. I don't know how many parades I've done. We've done lots of parades. I didn't even know there was that many parades existed in the world, but we've been at all those parades and events, and it's just almost every night there's something going on, and that's where I'm at, even if it's 10 people to where it's several hundred people.
That's fantastic. It's amazing talking to people. Helen Ali was one recently in Virginia, and she's just tireless. All of you guys are working so hard with so little money or no money. But I think that seems to resonate with people more now. I think everybody is sick of all that. So do you hear this back from people just in the general public? Can you kind of tout well, we're running on no money, and I think it's a plus. Like we say, our organization has no money. We're not being told what to say or how to do things by money. So
Yeah, I think that it is a benefit. It's almost freeing in a way. We do have money. I mean, we got a lot of people that have donated $25, $10. You know, and
right.
it really means a lot when they write their letters and they tell me that they're disabled and here's $10 to help your campaign out. And that means more to me than probably 1,200 or 2,500 coming from someone rich
Right.
that really can't afford to give up that money. We have lots of donors. And I think that's what the good thing. It just doesn't add up enough to buy radio ads and that kind of stuff that you sort of, in this district, it's so big that we have to be able to get our message out somehow. And,
right.
You know, we're coming in the end, and we've been able to get our signs out, and we're going to be able to get some ads on the radio. And so far, my opponent hasn't spent any money, except for a campaign team of about $10,000 a month, to do anything.
Yeah, I see that. He's not really raised much, but it seems to be, yeah, it's sort of odd. Usually you see a lot more. I see 313,000. I like to use Open Secrets. Maybe he figures he's a shoe-in. So let's see, how many terms has he been? Let's see.
He's been in for 6 years.
6 years, okay. All right. And you know, I always have to ask because it is the rural South, and I'm in the South also. Was there a lot of Trump support in your district, and are you able to talk to those people too? What I've seen is a lot of those votes were an anti-establishment vote. It wasn't necessarily a pro-Trump vote. So are you able to sort of reach those people also?
Yeah, we've been able to work with Trump supporters, you know, and I just tell them, I'm not running against Trump. I take that right off the table because I just can't compete on that level of talking points.
No.
You know, I'm running against
I don't know how
Nancy.
you could.
Nancy hasn't done anything for you, and that's the message that we're trying to get out. Right.
Right. That's what I've found in talking to people, if I do run across them, is talk about what he's done and what is he actually upholding things that he said he would do, and just stick to the issues. And that's one of the things I love about this contract. And we also work with a contract for American Renewal, CFAR. I don't believe you've signed that one. There's a lot of crossover with the two. We have a lot of candidates that have signed both. But if you haven't, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, CFAR was a bit more restrictive.
Okay.
I think there was things in there that you had to resign and your job, and you know, when you get into Congress, there's a lot of compromise, and you can't promise that you're going to get certain things done in certain time periods.
Right.
And I just couldn't make those commitments, but I do agree that we need to work to get money out.
Well, right. I do feel like this contract, CWAC, has more crossover appeal, and it is more. It's anti-corruption. It's getting the money out, which I think
the heart of what I was working towards. So.
Yeah, everybody. But it sounds like you're also for so many things that, you know, I think that really Bernie was the one that started really talking about it nationally, but the infrastructure, the healthcare, education, and all of those things. CFAR is largely that platform, but you're not the first to say that it's restrictive in some ways. But so, okay, I'll ask you a somewhat tough question then, regarding military. So sorry, military spending. What is your feeling about that? Do you feel?
I don't think we have to worry about cutting military spending. But I am concerned that, you know, it's like we don't know that we've been at war for 30 years, and we're spending $160 million a day occupying Afghanistan, not even counting what we're taking to occupy Iraq. You know, when you spend that kind of money, and then, you know, there's also studies showing that they've lost $26 trillion or $26 billion. And when you lose that kind of money and you spend that kind of money on wars that we're just not really that interested in,
Right.
you can buy a lot of infrastructure and pay for everybody's health care and everybody's education here in the United States and rebuild this country to be a world-class country like it used to be.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always clarify when I say that. I think, I know I certainly never mean, cutting benefits to veterans or anything like that.
Right.
It's the waste that you see, the, crazy amounts of money that seem to go to defense contractors for helicopters that sit who knows where and aren't used.
Well,
And
one philosophy, though, on this is stop outsourcing our armies. We outsource food services, we outsource security, we outsource many, many things with the Army, and you do that. Well, what is a business model but to keep the business going? So the business is war, and you have to maintain war in order for these companies to make money. Put it back into the military, into the hands of the military in managing their food, their security, and their logistics.
right.
Those people, they don't want war. They know how nasty and war can be, and they'll work to get you out of war.
Right.
So, do you want to talk any about your opponent on that specifically? I'm gonna guess he's probably voted for increase in military spending, and anything you want to say there?
My opponent, he does want to get out of the war. So I mean, a libertarian, he's on the same wavelength as I am in that.
Okay, right.
Mode, but he has been and spent time with the Russians, as well as Rand Paul, as well as Trump. He has worked with the Russians in order to sell out our country.
Okay, I'm not aware of that. Do you care to elaborate, or we can move on?
He's been in secret meetings. It's regarding the NRA, the NRE meetings with the Russians. Mr. Massey is one of the big NRA proponents. He wants to arm our teachers, where I'd like to arm them with books and resources rather than giving them each a gun. He is big on the NRA. He talks about not having enough guns. If you can count your guns, you don't have enough guns. He had a picture of himself with an AK-47 after the Parkland shootings he put up on the Facebook. And it's just insensitivity and cruelty like that I'm running against. I mean, he's very much an aggravator of Moms Demand Action, which I've gained support for.
It sounds like, I'm just looking at some numbers here. Let's see, you've got 731,000 it looks like in your district. This is from 2010 census data, but only 327,000 votes. So that's pretty typical for turnout. It's low everywhere. We want to see it more. But he received 233,000 votes. So,
and that was the most. That was in 2016.
2016 with high it was high turnout. So
there's nobody above me on the ticket. So, and Republican enthusiasm is probably as low as it's going to get, and Democrat enthusiasm here in the state is about as high as you're going to get it.
I see.
And the district is almost evenly split. If Democrats show up, I win.
Okay.
The math is we're down to 20,000 votes that we're targeting, and we think we're going to get those votes out. I just got one report back from my home county that it's looking very good here for a blue wave.
That's fantastic. I do hope you beat him. And yeah, I see here from like 2014, it was only 150,000 votes. So that's a big drop. My feeling is whenever I look at these numbers is that, you just see this apathy. People aren't engaged, and the largest group of people is non-voters. That's a really low percentage of turnout. And I think that candidates like yourself that are out there on the ground going to every parade, as you said, and talking to people and bypassing the big media and really showing that you're going to represent them, that I think that resonates with people. It gets people's attention who don't normally vote either. Have you found that? Have you run into people that have not been registered or just typically don't vote? Have you?
Yes, I mean it's the largest enthusiasm gap that we have shown to show up since I've been involved in politics. And I have been party chair and the treasurer here in the local county for over 20 years, and we've never seen anything like the involvement getting out and getting the vote out. I mean, here in the county, we've got people on the phone banks. We've never in 20 years had people on phone banks calling people. And we have that going all across the district. I think that, I mean, Republicans are calling me and saying that they're going to vote for me. I mean, that there is a movement here that people are just sick and tired of politics as normal, and they're ready to throw the bums out.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we hear that across the country. It's honestly doesn't even matter what label, whether you're Democrat, independent or green.
As I'm looking at it, we're just running under party labels because we have to, because it's a two-party system.
Exactly. Right. I was going to ask you what your history was, what kind of work you did before, but it sounds like you've already been very active in the community for a long time, which I'm sure gives you a giant head start. Sounds like.
I think it does locally. I mean, I'm involved heavily in my church and my kids' school. One of my kids go to private school at St. Mary's here locally, and I'm on the finance council at St. Bernadette there, and then I'm also on the parish council here at Immaculate Conception here in LaGrange. I'm a deeply religious person. I just don't wear it on my sleeve like some people do and judge others. I don't. I just, people are who they are, and they need to be who they are. And I appreciate that and respect that. And I've done other things in the local community. I've done a fundraiser for the Home for the Innocents and collecting costumes, Halloween costumes for the Home for the Innocents last year, and collected over 300 costumes for them.
Wow.
Been involved in the local Democratic politics for 20 years. I've been a Democrat all my life. Pretty much involved. I was in Young Democrats in college and was national committeeman to the DNC in the early 80s. And then I just got a job in the private sector, and I've been working in healthcare for 30-some years. All the way from paying claims to I've been the chief information officer at a global IT firm, and now I'm auditing Medicare claims, pharmacy claims at a company here in LaGrange.
Wow. So
I actually have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I see here in your biography on your homepage. So you were the band field commander and FBLA chapter president.
In high school.
During the desegregation of your high school. Can you tell me how that?
It was actually desegregation of the Jefferson County schools.
Okay.
Henry County schools, I mean, everybody went to the same school anyway.
Right.
We were a small school system. But we all had to live through that episode. I mean, people from the Jefferson County moved out to the local counties. And in some ways, that's how my home county today, Oldham County, got converted to Republicanism, is because the white people moved out to Oldham County.
Okay.
Wow. It's just fascinating to hear. We had a candidate, Paul Knupp, out in Iowa, and to hear him talk about, he was near Kent State when that happened, and just all that he talked about there, and then the racial stuff that happened in and around that. It's just really interesting. We were both born in the early 70s, so it's a little bit before our time, but it's really interesting to hear firsthand from some of the candidates that can sort of tell some of this history of these issues that we're seeing. I mean, they never went away, but they're now, sort of resurfacing and becoming more.
Yeah, desegregation, I mean, really did help Jefferson County schools. I mean, it made the school system a lot better school system. It wasn't until the General Assembly in Kentucky just started cutting the funds for schools, which just really pulled the carpet out from underneath the school system because they wanted to interject these charter schools in. They're creating a philosophy of self-fulfilling prophecy of take the money away. See, they're failing. Now we got to bring in charter schools. Cost more to bring in charter schools, and then we can pay teachers less, and our friends can make millions off of the deal.
Right, right. I think I'm almost embarrassed at this point to say that my daughters were both in a charter school for quite some time. Not any longer. I think it had a little different flavor, at least when we joined it. It was really parents that just wanted to do things a little differently, but it grew bigger and bigger, and yeah, the money came in, and the funding went to certain things people wanted, and there was no real oversight. The board, you couldn't go, up higher if you had a problem with stuff that was happening. The board was all there, right there. They were making all the decisions. And we did hear a lot about that. The teachers were paid really poorly and didn't have much job security. So, yeah.
Even the public school teachers today, I think, are paid poorly.
Yes.
I mean, to make $50,000 a year, I think that is a paltry amount to pay a teacher who is in a room handling 40 or 50 kids.
Yeah.
I mean, if you paid that teacher $7 an hour for babysitting per kid,
yes,
they make a lot more money.
I remember there was a thing that circulated, an email about that a few years ago. I thought that was fabulous because, yeah, they should be paid way more. I mean, taking care of children.
We need to go to teach our students, and we need to pay. We need the pay to be there. And if you really want good people to teach, I'd love to teach, but I make more money in the private sector. I mean, I think people that have a passion for teaching, more of them would come into the marketplace and teach if salaries were high.
Absolutely. I've heard many people say that. Absolutely. So I actually have
some of the biggest employers in some of my counties. I mean, you go to Lewis County or Greenup County, the school system is the biggest employer. And that could be an economic engine to pay your teachers more.
Right.
And that creates an economy surrounding your teachers. I did a study in one of my counties, Henry County, and we had 212 teachers that they were going to cut their benefits 20%. And that's the proposal that's been put on the table here in Kentucky. Cut their retirement benefits 20%. Well, you take those 212 teachers and you cut them 20%, that drops their salary from 40-some thousand down to 34,000. That puts their salary, their retirement salary, that all they get, because they don't get Social Security now, that puts them below the poverty line. Now, taking that $1.6 million out of the Henry County economy also unemploys 50 more people that had jobs, because that money's not there to circulate anymore.
Right.
So 50 people of any age are now unemployed. Now they can go to crime, they can go to drugs, if they stay in a county, or they can move out of the county. But anyway, social services now has to pick up to pay for those 50 people, unemployment, Medicaid, social services, and then for all the teachers that have fallen below the poverty line, it's got to pick up Medicaid, social services to pick them up. All that cost for that $1,200 cut in salary is now costing $6 million in that economic impact of that county.
Wow.
And there was no economic impact study done for this bill that was passed in the state legislature.
Wow. That's quite impressive. I mean, that you did all that work. It's terrible.
We're talking billions of dollars, but this is what they do. They come in, they undermine the school system, and then they do that across the state, and the state bankrupts itself because of all the social service. And then they go, oh, look, these services have failed too. Now we need to cut these things out.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
It's a perpetual motion of cut, and you just cannot cut yourself to prosperity.
No,
you've got to spend. You've got to put money into the economy. It's like an engine, and you put that money into it. It fuels a dynamic economy.
Well, right. I mean, there are plenty of studies that show, especially, below a certain income, I can't remember the numbers right now, but that when people have more money in their pocket, they're going to be buying more. They're not really at a level where they're just going to sock it away and, have it earn interest. They're going to spend. They have things they want to buy. So it just seems so obvious that that's the answer, but I don't know. Different philosophy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a difference because they compare it to your household.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of your household, you cut money in order to pay bills. And it's a little bit different because in your household, you don't have the economic impact that you can have when you've got thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
You give thousands of people $100, what are they going to do? They're going to go out and spend it at restaurants probably.
Right.
Give them $1,000, they might remodel part of their house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I happened to see that one of your recent posts on Facebook, I believe, hang on, make sure I don't, yeah, it was just not too long ago, was something about the stock market, I believe. Wasn't that?
Right. I posted something about the stock market. In the last few weeks, it's been collapsing because some of my people some of the Republicans have been attacking me, saying that under Obama, it was just as bad. But I was trying to show that with the stock market falling, I think we're moving into territory that we're not prepared for. We're heading again towards a 2007 type of crisis.
That's why I was wondering if you wanted to. You seem to study numbers a lot. If you wanted to elaborate on that a lot, because I've heard a lot about this too, and not my strength, economics.
I don't want it to happen, so I don't talk much about it. I just posted that to educate some of my constituents.
Gotcha. I think that for a lot of people, though, I don't know do you know off the top of your head what the poverty rate is of your district?
I don't.
It's all right. Don't mean to put you on the spot there, but we've talked. Like I said,
the income is not necessarily very high. The median income is only $49,000.
Wow. So I think there's just this really big disconnect when what's on the media is everything's great. The stock market's doing well, and for so many people, it doesn't have really any direct impact. They don't own stocks, and it's really not a marker at all for how most people are doing.
Right.
So.
No, it's not a marker. It's just an indicator. If it goes really bad, it can impact your unemployment at certain companies. The thing is our salaries today are depressed. Our salaries have not increased.
Absolutely. That's okay. Like I said, it's your dog this time, not mine. So, I actually want to ask you a question because it's related to health insurance. You said you processed claims. You used to. So, are you the guy that always wants to deny them, or what did you do exactly?
No, I mean actually, in the 1980s, when I was processing them, our philosophy at the Prudential Insurance Company was to find a way to pay the claims. It's only recently these insurance companies have really got into this.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can say that they found a way not to pay the claims, but it feels that way.
It most definitely does.
I worked for them for a few years.
Right.
I did work in building one here Medicare for the federal government. That was a contract that was let out to one of the companies I worked for, and I started that with just 13 reps and grew to 2,000 agents. So I know how to place jobs and grow jobs, and I've done economic impact analysis by putting jobs in certain states. And I know how to create an economy, and just from being in a private business, and it's just something that I don't think my opponent knows how to do. He's just standing for one thing and saying I'm a libertarian, and using his ideology to vote no on everything and say, hey, look, I'm an ideologue. I voted no on everything while everybody is, of course, hurting, not making salaries, and, of course, their health care is killing them.
Well, I'm sure things are very different from the 80s with all of that. I mean, it's all for profit now. And so what are your feelings about Obamacare then specifically? I mean, obviously it did some really good things, but then the premiums have skyrocketed so much. What do you, if people ask you this, what's your response?
Well, I support the Affordable Care Act, which is Obamacare,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to prop it back up. I mean, it has been cut 1,000 different ways,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the main reasons why your premiums are going higher is because the risk corridor was taken out, and that helped reimburse insurance companies for the high-risk patients.
Mm-hmm.
When they took that out of it, that created the premium explosion that we see today.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm just going to ask you, because I'm going to hope I'm not the only one that doesn't know exactly what that means. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that, what the risk corridor does and how that affects?
Yeah, the risk corridor, when that was removed, that was a vehicle to fund the insurance companies to take on patients that were very sick. So these people may have chronic diseases like diabetes or cancer, some of the heart disease.
Right.
Those patients cost the healthcare system way more. So they're like 20% of the healthcare system.
Right.
20% of the patients, but 80% of the costs. So the risk corridor helped cover the risk of covering those patients by offloading. The government just said, okay, I'll write you a check, insurance company A, to help cover the cost of this, and don't include them in the premium risk exposure that you're calculating premiums for everybody else.
Okay. All right. And when was that removed?
That was removed under Obama because it was made because he could not do a line item veto in the last year. Marco Rubio put it into the Budget Act, and Obama had to sign it because he couldn't get the rest of his budget through without signing it. But the Republicans did it.
Wow. I think we need to add into the contract, bills that don't have 18 other things in it that that's always the case. It seems like the way things are packaged, other things get passed or don't get passed because people want to sign on to. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, sometimes it's probably not good to see how the sausage is made, but right now the sausage isn't being made in our flavor.
No. That's interesting. I'll have to look up more about that risk corridor. Interesting. You learn something new every day.
Yeah, that's the big component that's dramatically increased the premiums.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because they are really, really high. I know ours are like $1,400 a month, and that's through employer, and that would be the same on the exchange. So yeah, if you're making, like you said, a teacher's salary, if their benefits aren't great and they wanted to go, get their own, that's what they're looking at. It's crazy.
That is nuts.
Well, it certainly sounds like you know your stuff, and you would be a far better representative of the 4th District in Kentucky for sure. And so is there anything that you want to cover that maybe we haven't yet that specifically want to say to anyone that might be listening?
Yeah. I'm a first-time candidate running because I love America, and it doesn't seem like people that have a passion for their country are running anymore. They have a passion for the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get off my seat and run or get off the sideline and get in the game for any reason. I got off because my son's adopted from Guatemala. And of course you can see that I'm a white person, and you can tell that he's from Guatemala. But when Trump was elected, I'm standing up to those people who said they're going to build a wall and deport my child, because I'm not going to tolerate that in my country and those kind of values. We created this country with a diversity, and we need to maintain this country with a diversity. And that passion's what drives me. And every day I wake up, I'm fighting that battle to protect thousands of children just like him. Mm-hmm. And they're senior citizens. My mother died of MRSA.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Got MRSA in the hospital. and it almost bankrupted her because the pension system was already under cuts, and she worked for the state, and she didn't have enough money, hardly enough money to even bury. And you know, those type of things hit me personally. And I know it's hitting lots of people personally, and they don't know who to blame. They don't understand government and politics and how all this works. And someone like me's got to get in here and say, what is the truth? You got to decide whether I'm telling you the truth. You got to elect me, make a difference.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, very, very important point. I think there's a lot of anger, and you know, when people are out of work and someone can just say, here, point at these people over here, and they don't really understand how it all works. Yeah, someone needs to explain it. And you're right. I mean, we've heard a lot of stories. When I spoke to, I believe it was Ryan Trundle in Louisiana, he was talking about a story where a guy who was diabetic didn't have enough money for his insulin, and so he was, you know, cutting it, and he died. I mean, these are the story, and it's happening more and more, and it's just, it can't continue.
It's a drug that was invented 100 years ago, but yet the cost has gone up 500%. Just so rich people can make even more money.
Right. Well, I'll tell you a quick story. My daughter knocked her 2 front teeth out sledding, and she goes to college in Glasgow, Scotland, which I also have to point out costs the same amount of money as an American citizen to go over there as it would for state school here, UNC. So people, just an FYI. But she knocked her 2 front teeth out. We had to pay what's called the NHS. We had to pay $900 for her for 4 years. It was mandatory, even though she's on insurance here. And it cost £75 to fix both of her teeth, which was, that's about $100. Veneers and everything. So taking my younger daughter to the orthodontist, I told her this to get braces on, which is, you know, $6,000. I told her the story, and she just could not believe it. She said $100, that would be thousands, like, per tooth. So that's when you hear this, it's like it's obviously very artificially overinflated. Like, what's his name? Skrelly, was that his name? The guy that upped the price of the EpiPen just because he could.
Oh. Yeah, just because he could.
Yeah, and it's people's lives. I'm just such a firm believer, also as a half Canadian, to that we have to take the profit motive out of healthcare. It's just literally killing people.
Profit motive out of war. We got to take the profit motive out of prisons and out of schools and out of healthcare. That's 4 places profit motives don't work.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely. Right, and take it out of elections. Take the money out of elections too.
That's right, elections too. I agree. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we will let you go, and not, you know, you have to drive. You want to tell what you're doing, how dedicated you are driving. How many hours? 2 hours in the morning.
2 hours in the morning to get to a radio show in Cynthiana.
Okay, and your district is how many miles did you say?
Yeah, it's.
Couple hour drive.
Miles. It's 3.5 hours across to get across it.
Wow. And you're going to every parade you can, huh? I
have gone everywhere. We've been in every county, and many counties multiple times.
That's amazing, and I really hope to see you win. It sounds like you do really have a very good shot here, so we'll definitely.
It's improving every day.
We'll definitely be paying attention, and we'd love to have you back on if you do. You know, our candidates that are successful, a lot of them aren't. They're up against some really big odds, and we hope that they run again in 2020. But you sound like you might really boot this guy out. So I hope you do, and maybe you could come back and talk to us at some point about talk more about the contract. Tell people about the anti-corruption contract.
We've been telling
Great. Has that gotten good response?
Huh?
That's gotten good response when you tell people that?
A fairly good response, yeah.
Yeah, right. Good.
But there's so many issues. I mean, they're just, when you get time with a constituent, I mean, they're going to health care. They're going to...
Oh, right.
I mean, they don't... The whole politics things, how much it costs us, they're not really there yet because it's all about them.
Right,
Right.
of course. But I think pretty much people want the money out. They know that it's corrupting things, whether they know the details or not. I think it's pretty
I agree.
clear. Yeah.
I think it'll be a good side effect to get it out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, have a good night, and thank you so much for taking the time tonight before you have to get up early tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks a lot,
Okay.
Seth.
Very nice
Thank
to
you,
meet
Brian.
you,
Yeah,
Seth.
Have a good night and a good drive.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.